the theme that, you've been red pilled has been a going on meme. And I'm here to tell you that all of those who you've been thinking that you've been red pilled, you actually haven't been red pilled at all. You are only Neo meeting Trinity in the bar where she says, you can't sleep because you're looking for the question, but you haven't found it yet. You don't know about the red pill, so I'm going to give you the red pill right here, right now. And I'm going to tell you that Biden represents the Matrix and Agent Smith, and you have no idea how or why. Anything that you have heard from anywhere, including QAnon or Trump himself, is not the whole story, because no one's telling you the whole story, so I will. So this is when I tell you red pill or blue pill. It all goes back to 1979 and 1953 even. After the Second World War, the new Cold War that arrives ends up a quest for oil. Because after the Second World War, it becomes very clear that the machine of war, planes, tanks, trucks, ships, rockets, everything runs on oil. So after the Second World War is over and the Americans have prevailed, but the Soviet Union remains, the competition between the left and the right becomes for oil. By left and right, I mean the communists and the capitalists become for oil. And the existence of a civilization becomes dependent upon oil because the Americans and the Russians both know that one of the big reasons for the defeat of the Nazis was that they could not secure and procure quantities and qualities of petroleum fuel for their machinery of war. That's not the only reason, but it's a big one. The only way that you have B-52 bombers flying to Berlin and you have, P-51 Mustangs able to accompany bombers to Berlin is because the Allies have access to better quality fuels than the Germans do. And this sets off a whole dynamic in the Cold War that no one told you about, but you saw it in the news and never understood. So Iran is the big thing here. Iran had a democracy, a democratic government, elected government, a fellow called Mossadegh. And in Iran, the British Petroleum Company had interests in oil, and the democratically elected government of Iran decides to nationalize oil interests and throw out the foreigners who'd been milking Iran's oil. The British asked the Americans to help them out. And the Americans get involved and they ensure the return of the monarch of Iran, who then ensures that the American oil companies and the British oil companies all keep getting their oil, and he gets rich, but the Iranian people get nothing. And in order to ensure that he gets his way, he makes sure the Shah of Iran, the king of Iran, the Shah, the monarch, whatever you want to call him, he ensures that the Americans are happy and the English are happy and NATO is happy. And he's getting F-14 Tomcats, and Boeing is creating special aircraft for Iran Air, the Boeing 747 SP, a specially designed 747 to enable non-stop flights from Tehran to New York. They're tight. But what the Shah is doing in Iran is that anybody in Iran who is opposing an opposition that in Iran is not allowed, and he suppresses all opposition. The only opposition that he cannot oppress are the religious fundamentalists. And the religious fundamentalists grow and grow and grow and eventually overthrow the Shah of Iran, who has been placed there by the Americans and the English in contravention of democracy so that their own profit continues. And the Shah does not become beholden to the Soviets. So in 1979, you have the Iran Revolution, And the Iranian Revolution, you have the hostage crisis and all of that. That's what you get told. Oh, the Iranian Ayatollahs, they took the hostages, blah, 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 blah. But what you were never told is that Saudi Arabia, in the Muslim world, there is a major fracture. There are Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims. Iran is Shia. Saudi Arabia is the head of the Sunni Muslims. And when Iran turns into a fundamentalist Shia religious orthodoxy, the Saudis get worried because the Shia want to capture Mecca, Medina, and take over and throw the Sauds out. So the Saudis, having seen what has happened in Iran and the muscularity of religious fundamentalism that the Ayatollahs, the Shia Ayatollahs of Iran have started, decide that they now have to do religious fundamentalism of the Sunni Muslims for their own strength. 1979. This is, the jihad is Soviet Union is in has been operating in Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia has provided lots and lots of money to throw the Soviets out of Afghanistan. But see, here's the thing: the Islamic fundamentalism that is a Taliban in Afghanistan, it is a creation of the American establishment that has the idea that the way to defeat Iranian Shia Islamic fundamentalism is to encourage Sunni Islamic fundamentalism. And in that, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are given the front row seat. 1979. And then Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, in order to ensure their security and safety from the fundamentalist Shia Muslims of Iran, then set about on a mission to prepare every Sunni Muslim in the world for jihad. This shows up as Al-Qaeda, as Taliban, as Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hizb al-Mujahideen, Hizb al-Tahrir, Al-Muhajirun. All of them are Sunni factions that Saudi Arabia sponsors, births, creates under American sponsorship and guidance in order to oppose the Ayatollahs of Iran. That's 1979. So you have 9/11, you have 30 years of Islamic terrorism by Pakistan, you have bombings in Mali, and it goes on and on and on and on. And ISIS fighters, everything happens because the Saudis are concerned about the Ayatollah threat in Iran. And they have been encouraged to fight this threat by the American establishment. And then this ends up in 9/11. And then the Pakistanis and the Saudis say, this is your doing. We are not taking responsibility for it. And George Bush then says, we got to fight war on terror. Then instead of telling the people of America that, that because of the Shia takeover, of the Ayatollah takeover in Iran, we encourage Saudi Arabia to create Muslim fundamentalism, instead of acknowledging that, they go after Saddam, who has oil but is not involved in this shit. They take Iraq eventually. Iraq is majority Shia, ends up in the Iran camp. And this goes on and on and on and on, and everything in the world is being driven by the Saudi reality that they have the money, that America put them up to this, and now everything is going to go that way, and you in America get shit about racism and George Floyd and imperialism and bullshit, while the entire world establishment was focused on the reality that had been created to help the Saudis beat the Ayatollahs in a competition of Islamic religious fundamentalism. And Donald Trump changed that. Donald Trump shows up on the scene and makes clear to the Saudis that dynamic is over. That no longer will Saudi Arabia need to worry about Shia fundamentalism from Iran for its own safety. and that everything that has happened from 1979 to the present, driven by Saudi Arabia for its own security against Iran, can be forgotten, must be forgotten. Therefore, whatever terrorism and jihad that Pakistan has been doing, the 2 million people that Pakistan has killed, it's over. If the cause of Palestine has been given to all the lefties everywhere, from Britain to India to America, everywhere, as the cause of how evil the Israelis are and the poor Palestinians, that's over. No, done. And so he starts that, MBS. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. So he says, we're done with everything that we've done in 1979. Now we're going to have peace. And Pakistan and all these countries and everyone who has been doing jihad, that has been encouraged by the Saudi monarchy as a contradiction to Iran, is now over. Trump achieved that. But everybody in the American establishment and the British establishment and everywhere else who had been, for the last 40, 50 years, had been relying on for profit and power. This includes a deep state, intelligence agencies, defense contractors, profiteers of various kinds, who had all been relying on the unending war and conflict and money that came out of this for the last 40 years, were profoundly upset at the idea that Trump had said to the Saudis, there is no need for this anymore. So they had to get Trump out. So the results are in front of you, the election results. Now Biden is going on and pretending, senile old fucker pretending that he's about racial or social justice. Biden is the idiot, corrupt crook presented to you motherfuckers so that you don't get red-pilled about what Trump has really achieved. Trump has achieved the end of the oil wars and the Cold Wars and the Islamic Jihad that started in 1953 with the overthrow of the democratic government in Iran. That's what he has achieved. And his achievement is so profound that my country, that has suffered for 70 years of jihadi terrorism, now has no worries and is on the side, because the Saudis and the UAE have said the fight is over. You're our friends. Trump has brought about phenomenal peace and resolution to the issues of the world. And in this, he is being destroyed. He is being destroyed by the system that ran on the profiteering of conflict in the Middle East between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and George Bush are all minions of that system and that machine that destroyed your lives, your economy, without ever telling you what they were doing. Trump did it. They got Trump out, supposedly. But Trump changed history in a way that now Biden cannot undo. The Saudis have now set on a course that, we are done with this shit, and now Biden can't come along and no one else can come along and unwind what Trump has already achieved. That's the red pill that you need to understand. If you're into whatever else, if this is what you don't realize, then you haven't understood. Because Trump, so here's the thing, right? I don't know if you heard about Khashoggi. Khashoggi was a Saudi journalist who was writing in the Washington Post about how Saudi Arabia, trying to unwind from 1979, was revising history. This was a guy who was on the side of the establishment that wanted the war to continue. The Saudis took care of him. Whatever way they have, that's their way. And the Turks betrayed them. And when the Turks betrayed them on the Khashoggi matter, the Saudis became very clear that now it wasn't just about Sunni and Shia. Now Turkey was making a claim for leadership of the Sunni world. So now, was Saudi Arabia going to continue this bullshit with Iran and the American establishment? Or were they going to give up this shit and say, you know what, no. So Saudi Arabia said no, and Trump was part of that. And now Turkey is taking its role and Iran is taking its role, and Saudi Arabia has pulled the plug on jihad. Red pill.